Get down on the ground now. The officer's voice boomed through the air, cutting through the calm of the evening. Ava, a young black woman, blinked in disbelief. Her heart raced. What was happening? Detective Harris rushed forward, gripping her arm before she could process the situation. Don't play dumb. You know exactly what's going on. You were just seen making a drop in the back lot. Ava's mind spun in confusion. Making a drop? What were they talking about? What? Her voice trembled as she tried to grasp the reality. I just came in to buy some snacks. Save it. Hands behind your back, Harris ordered, his tone sharp and unforgiving. Before she could protest, he yanked her backward, securing cold metal handcuffs around her wrists. Panic surged through her. Wait, this is a mistake. I don't know what you're talking about. I just got here. The officers were indifferent to her pleas. Nearby, a small crowd gathered, their faces reflecting shock and curiosity, whispering among themselves. Some pulled out their phones to capture the unfolding drama, while others looked on with concern. As the camera zoomed in, a voice broke through the noise. If you believe in standing against injustice, let us know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button. Only those who accept injustice will ignore it. Days later, the courtroom was enveloped in a heavy silence. But it wasn't the kind of silence that promised peace. It felt like the calm before a storm, thick with the weight of injustice. At the center sat Ava Thompson, a recent high school graduate, handcuffed at the defendant's table. The metal bit into her skin, leaving angry red marks. Though she sat with her back straight, her eyes betrayed a whirlwind of fear, confusion and betrayal. Across the room, Detectives Harris and Reed lounged comfortably, their confident smirks barely concealed. The two white officers exchanged glances, their arrogance evident in their relaxed posture. This wasn't their first rodeo. They had played this game before, and they had always emerged victorious. The judge, an older man with a stern expression, leaned back in his chair, showing little interest in Ava's defense. His bias was clear, etched into the deep lines of his forehead, and the dismissive wave of his hand whenever Ava's attorney attempted to speak. The prosecutor stood, a polished smile plastered across his face, addressing the jury with the ease of someone who already knew the outcome. The evidence is undeniable, he proclaimed, gesturing toward a black duffel bag filled with drugs. Drugs that Ava had never seen before. Ava's throat tightened, as anger and desperation bubbled within her. She wanted to scream, to fight back, to tell them this was all a setup. But the system wasn't designed to listen to someone like her. She glanced at her mother in the gallery, tears streaming down her face, then turned her gaze to the back of the courtroom. There sat a man, still as stone, his dark eyes fixed ahead. He wore a crisp suit, exuding an unsettling calm that contrasted sharply with the chaos around them. Ava's father, Michael Thompson, was watching. He remained expressionless, biding his time. The prosecutor continued, confidence growing in his voice. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have not one, but three witnesses who observed the defendant in possession of these drugs. He turned to the two corrupt officers, who sat up straighter, ready to play their parts. Ava's heart raced as she listened to their lies. We saw Miss Thompson trying to distribute narcotics in a school parking lot, Detective Reed claimed, his voice smooth and rehearsed, as if he had delivered this line countless times before. The jury nodded along, the judge remained unmoved, and Ava's public defender barely objected. Ava's pulse quickened. She wanted to shout, I wasn't even there, but she knew it wouldn't matter. The jury had already made up their minds before the trial began. The officers looked proud of themselves, like they were invincible, capable of planting evidence, lying under oath, and ruining lives without consequence. But this time, they had framed the wrong girl. Michael Thompson didn't flinch. In his mind he was dismantling every individual in that room, every officer, every lawyer, every corrupt official. They had no idea who they were up against. As the trial continued, the real battle had already begun. The prosecutor approached the jury, his smile unwavering. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a clear-cut case. The defendant was caught red-handed, and the testimony from two respected officers confirms it. Respected? Ava almost laughed at the absurdity. The judge leaned forward, finally addressing Ava. Miss Thompson, he said, his tone condescending, do you have anything to say before I hand down my verdict?
Ava opened her mouth, but her gaze flickered back to her father. Michael still hadn't moved, but this time she noticed a hint of a smirk, a silent promise, a warning to the courtroom. They believed they had won, they thought it was over. But for Ava, this was just the beginning. What do you think will happen next? Share your thoughts in the comments,
and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the moment these corrupt officers face the consequences of their actions. The courtroom was steeped in an unsettling hush, the kind that foreshadows an impending storm. Ava Thompson, barely out of high school, sat shackled at the defendant's table. The cuffs chafed against her wrists, leaving red marks that mirrored the turmoil in her heart. Though she sat with her back straight, her eyes conveyed a tempest of fear, disbelief and betrayal. Across the room, Detectives Harris and Reed exuded a casual confidence that seemed unnervingly out of place. The two officers, seasoned players in this game of deceit, exchanged knowing glances, their smirks hinting at an arrogance born from years of manipulating the system. They reclined in their seats, seemingly bored by the proceedings unfolding before them. The judge, a man whose face was carved with deep lines of disinterest, presided over the trial with a demeanor as chilly as the courtroom itself. He barely acknowledged Ava's defense, his bias apparent in the dismissive wave of his hand whenever her lawyer attempted to speak. The prosecutor stood, his presence commanding and his smile polished to perfection. He addressed the jury with the assurance of someone who believed he had already won. "Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is overwhelming," he declared, gesturing toward a black duffel bag on display, filled with drugs Ava had never touched. Ava's heart sank, the weight of injustice pressed down on her like a physical force. She wanted to scream, to fight, to tell them she was innocent. That this was all a setup, but the system wasn't designed to listen to someone like her, someone who didn't fit the narrative they had already decided upon. Her mother sat in the gallery, tears streaming silently down her face. The sight of her mother's pain cut Ava deeply, but it also fueled a flicker of resolve within her. She turned her gaze to the back of the courtroom, where her father, Michael Thompson, sat with an air of quiet determination. His presence was a steadying force in the chaos, a reminder that she was not alone. The prosecutor continued, his voice growing in volume and confidence. "We have not one, but 3 witnesses who saw the defendant in possession of these substances," he announced, motioning toward Detectives Harris and Reed, who sat in ready to corroborate the lie. Ava's blood boiled as she listened to Detective Reed recount a fabricated story. "We observed Miss Thompson attempting to distribute narcotics in a school parking lot," he stated with practiced ease, as if reciting from a script. The jury nodded along, seemingly convinced. The judge, unmoved, glanced at his watch, as if eager to move on. Ava's public defender rose to his feet, his movements hesitant, and his voice lacking the conviction needed to sway the jury. "Your Honor," he began, "the prosecution has not presented any concrete forensic evidence linking my client to the charges. No fingerprints, no DNA." The judge cut him off with an impatient gesture. "Move it along, counselor." The defender's shoulders slumped slightly, a visible manifestation of the uphill battle he faced. Ava watched him, her hope dwindling with each passing second. The courtroom felt like a theater, where the outcome was predetermined, and she was merely a pawn in a much larger game. The prosecutor called Detective Harris to the stand. Harris took his place with the practiced confidence of someone who had done this 100 times. He painted a picture of Ava as a delinquent, spinning tales of her supposed criminal activities with a smooth, unyielding voice. Ava listened in disbelief as Harris described her as uncooperative and aggressive during the arrest. Lies, all of it. She hadn't resisted, she hadn't been hostile. She had been terrified, pleading for them to understand that they had the wrong person. The jury watched Harris with rapt attention, their expressions unreadable. Ava's heart pounded in her chest, and she fought the rising tide of hopelessness threatening to engulf her. Her gaze drifted back to her father, who remained a silent sentinel, his expression unreadable but his presence a beacon of hope. The prosecutor concluded his presentation, turning to the jury with a final flourish. "This is a clear case of a young woman making poor choices," he intoned, as if imparting a lesson. "Law enforcement was merely doing their duty, protecting our community from dangerous individuals." Ava clenched her fists, fighting the urge to shout out in protest. She felt the eyes of the jury on her, but she couldn't tell if they saw her as a victim or a criminal. The lines between right and wrong had blurred into a murky gray, and she was trapped in the middle, struggling to find her voice. As the court proceedings drew to a close, Ava's lawyer rose once more, his resolve seemingly renewed. "Your Honor," he said, "we request that the court consider the lack of physical evidence and the character of the defendant, an honor student with no prior criminal record." The judge sighed, clearly uninterested in hearing more. "You've made your point, counselor. Let's proceed." The jury filed out to deliberate, leaving the courtroom in a tense silence. Ava sat in her chair, her heart heavy with the weight of the unknown. She glanced at her mother, who offered a weak but encouraging smile. It was a small gesture, but it was enough to remind Ava that she had something worth fighting for. Meanwhile, Michael Thompson remained in his seat, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts and plans. He knew the system was rigged against his daughter, but he wasn't about to let it destroy her future. Ava was innocent, and he would prove it, no matter what it took. As the jury returned to the courtroom, tension hung thick in the air. The foreperson rose, ready to deliver the verdict. Ava held her breath, her heart pounding. The journey was far from over, and she knew that the fight for justice had only just begun. The courtroom spectacle unfolded with a cruel precision, each moment a reminder of the system's indifference toward justice. Yet amidst the chaos, Michael Thompson remained a silent observer, his gaze fixed, his mind a fortress of resolve. He had seen enough to understand that his daughter Ava was entangled in a web of lies, spun by those sworn to protect and serve. Michael was no ordinary man. His past was shrouded in the secrets of covert operations and shadowy corridors of power. Before he was a father, he was an operative, honed by the CIA to dismantle criminal empires. Now those skills lay dormant, but not forgotten, ready to be wielded in defense of his daughter. As Ava sat in the courtroom, Michael knew the real battle lay outside, where corruption had festered unchecked. While the jury deliberated, Michael made his move. He stepped out of the courtroom, his mind a whirl of strategies and contacts. He didn't need a legal team to prove Ava's innocence. He needed the truth, and he knew exactly where to find it. His first call was to a trusted contact at the Department of Justice. It wasn't a request. It was a directive. "Check your email, in 5 minutes," he stated, his voice a calm command. The call ended, leaving no room for refusal. Next, he contacted Internal Affairs. The records of Detectives Harris and Reed were a tapestry of misconduct, each thread woven with deceit. He instructed them to dig deeper, to uncover the hidden patterns that had eluded scrutiny for so long. His final call was to the FBI. It was more than a request. It was a personal favor. "I need Vanessa," he said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Vanessa had been one of the finest undercover agents, a master of infiltration and exposure. Disguised as a journalist, she began asking questions that others feared to voice. Why did every major drug bust in the city trace back to Harris and Reed? Why did evidence conveniently disappear under their watch? Meanwhile, Michael knew he needed concrete evidence, something undeniable to shatter the facade built against Ava. He reached out to an old ally, a hacker who owed him a favor. "I need the original store footage," he instructed, his voice a blend of urgency and authority. Within minutes, the footage was recovered. It was raw and unedited, showing Ava entering the convenience store, her actions innocent and mundane. The narrative spun by Harris and Reed unraveled in the face of this truth. But the hacker found more. A trove of evidence detailing the officers' history of framing innocent individuals, their systematic destruction of lives. Among the digital debris was a damning audio file, a recording of Reed's voice, arrogant and unguarded. "We could throw a brick of coke at any kid in this city, and a jury would still take our word over theirs," he boasted, his words a chilling testament to their unchecked power. Michael's hands were steady as he compiled the evidence, each piece a nail in the coffin of corruption. He knew that revealing the truth would not only free Ava, but also dismantle the empire of deceit that Harris and Reed had built. Back in the courtroom, Ava sat in tense anticipation. She didn't know what her father was doing, but she trusted him implicitly. He was her anchor, her unwavering beacon of hope in a sea of uncertainty. The jury returned, their expressions inscrutable as they prepared to deliver their verdict. As the foreperson stood, the tension in the room was palpable. Ava's heart pounded, her future hanging in the balance. But Michael was already a step ahead. Armed with the evidence, he re-entered the courtroom, his demeanor calm and composed. He approached the judge with a folder, its contents a weapon far more potent than any argument presented thus far. The judge hesitated, his eyes narrowing with suspicion before he opened it. As he scanned the documents, his face paled, the realization of the truth striking with undeniable force. The prosecutor, once confident and assured, faltered. The courtroom buzzed with whispered speculation as the judge called for order. Michael's presence was a catalyst, a turning point in a battle that had seemed lost. Vanessa's investigation had unveiled a network of corruption that extended beyond Harris and Reed, implicating others who had turned a blind eye to justice. The evidence was irrefutable, the recordings damning, and the impact immediate. The judge, now faced with irrefutable proof, had no choice but to act. He ordered an immediate review of the case, the weight of his previous indifference now a burden he could no longer ignore. The prosecutor's smug demeanor crumbled as the reality of the exposed conspiracy settled over the room. Ava watched, hope rekindling as the tide shifted in her favor. Her father's intervention had turned the courtroom from a place of despair to a theater of justice. The murmurs grew louder, the shockwave of truth rippling through the crowd. Michael stood by Ava's side, his presence a testament to the power of determination and truth. He had dismantled the lies, exposed the corruption, and brought light to the darkness that had threatened to consume his daughter's future. As the judge announced a retrial, Ava felt the weight of the cuffs lift, both physically and metaphorically. Her father had given her a chance to reclaim her life, to step out from the shadow of injustice and into the light of vindication. The battle was not over, but the path to victory was clearer than ever. Michael's resolve had set in motion a reckoning that would not only free Ava but also serve as a warning to those who believed they could manipulate the system without consequence. With the courtroom abuzz with the revelation of truth, Michael and Ava shared a moment of quiet triumph. The journey ahead was still fraught with challenges, but together, they would face whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that justice, though delayed, would ultimately prevail. The courtroom buzzed with an electrifying energy, the air thick with anticipation, as the judge prepared to address the unfolding drama. Michael Thompson stood resolutely beside his daughter, Ava, a silent guardian ready to confront the injustice that had ensnared them. The tide had turned, and a sense of hope flickered in the hearts of those who had gathered to witness the proceedings. With a heavy gavel, the judge called the court to order. "We are here today to address new evidence that has come to light regarding the case against Miss Ava Thompson," he announced, his voice steady but tinged with a hint of urgency. The spectators leaned forward, their eyes fixed on the judge, eager to hear what would unfold. Michael stepped forward, his demeanor calm yet commanding. He presented the folder containing the newly uncovered evidence, a collection of documents and digital files that could dismantle the case built against his daughter. The judge accepted the folder, his brow furrowing as he began to sift through the contents. Ava's heart raced as she watched her father, knowing that this moment could change everything. She remembered the fear that had gripped her when she first entered the courtroom. But now, with Michael by her side and the truth in their hands, she felt a surge of determination. As the judge reviewed the evidence, Michael spoke, his voice unwavering. "Your Honor, this evidence reveals a pattern of corruption within the police department, specifically involving detectives Harris and Reed. Their actions have not only harmed my daughter, but have perpetuated a cycle of injustice in our community." The courtroom erupted in murmurs, the spectators exchanging glances of disbelief. The prosecutor, once so self-assured, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, the color draining from his face. He had built a case on lies, and now those lies were unraveling before everyone's eyes. The judge raised a hand to restore order. "I will allow this evidence to be presented. However, I will expect a thorough examination of its validity," he declared, his tone firm. He turned to the prosecutor, who appeared visibly shaken, and instructed him to respond. The prosecutor stood, attempting to regain his composure. "Your Honor, while we acknowledge the emergence of new evidence, I must caution that it is crucial to maintain the integrity of this trial. The defense has yet to prove that this evidence is relevant or admissible." Michael's voice cut through the tension. "Your Honor, the evidence includes video footage from the night of the arrest, as well as audio recordings that capture detectives Harris and Reed discussing their methods and intentions. This material is not only relevant, it is vital to the truth of this case." Ava's heart pounded as she anticipated the judge's reaction. The judge nodded, his expression contemplative as he considered Michael's words. He gestured for the courtroom to remain silent, as he listened carefully. The prosecutor was clearly flustered, grasping for a response. "Your Honor, we cannot simply accept hearsay and unverified footage without due diligence. We must—" "Enough," the judge interjected, his voice booming across the courtroom. "I will allow the defense to present the evidence, but I expect both sides to approach this matter with the seriousness it deserves." With that, Michael stepped aside, allowing Ava's lawyer to take center stage. The attorney approached the jury, his demeanor transformed, from hesitant to confident. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you are about to see is the original footage from the convenience store on the night of Ava's arrest. This footage has been recovered and shows the truth of what transpired." As the video played on the screen, a hush fell over the courtroom. The grainy footage displayed a view of the convenience store parking lot, capturing Ava entering the building, her demeanor relaxed and unsuspecting. She was simply there to buy snacks, unaware of the trap that awaited her outside. Gasps rippled through the room as the footage continued. The camera shifted to show two figures lurking near the store entrance, Detectives Harris and Reed, watching Ava intently, The scene unfolded like a carefully orchestrated play, revealing the moments leading to her wrongful arrest. The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably, realizing the implications of what the jury was witnessing. Michael watched intently, knowing that this was just the beginning. As the video progressed, it became evident that there was no drug deal, no incriminating exchange, just Ava going about her ordinary evening. When the video concluded, the courtroom was silent, the gravity of the moment hanging in the air. Ava felt a rush of hope. The truth was finally being revealed. The prosecutor, now visibly rattled, stood once more to object. "Your Honor, I must insist that the jury remain cautious in their interpretation of this footage. It does not conclusively prove Miss Thompson's innocence," he argued, though his voice lacked the confidence it had held earlier. The judge raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "I believe the jury deserves to see all relevant evidence before making a decision. Let's proceed with the next piece of evidence." Michael stepped forward again, this time presenting the audio recording that had been uncovered during Vanessa's investigation. "Your Honor, this recording features Detective Reed discussing his methods with another officer. It clearly illustrates their willingness to fabricate evidence and manipulate the system for their gain." As the recording played, Reed's voice echoed through the courtroom, casual and brimming with arrogance. "We could throw a brick of coke at any kid in this city, and a jury will still take our word over theirs. It's that easy." The smug tone of his voice sent shock waves through the room, and the murmurs grew louder. Ava's heart raced, a mixture of anger and relief washing over her. She had known it all along that the officers had conspired against her, but hearing it laid bare made the betrayal all the more painful. The jury exchanged shocked glances, their expressions shifting from skepticism to horror. The prosecutor's face turned pale, the weight of the evidence crashing down on him. He was losing control of the narrative, and he knew it. The judge, now fully engaged, turned his attention back to Michael. "Mr. Thompson, do you have any further evidence to present?" "Yes, Your Honor," Michael replied, his voice steady. "I believe it is pertinent to show the full scope of the corruption involved in this case. The actions of Detectives Harris and Reed extend beyond my daughter's arrest. They have systematically targeted innocent individuals, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake." Michael presented additional documentation detailing previous cases where Harris and Reed had been involved, each one marred by irregularities and questionable practices. The evidence painted a damning portrait of two officers who had abused their power for personal gain. As the judge reviewed the documents, the courtroom remained tense, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. Ava could feel the tide turning, the momentum shifting in her favor. She glanced at her father, who remained a pillar of strength beside her. Finally, the judge spoke. "It is clear that the evidence presented raises significant questions about the integrity of the officers involved in this case. I will grant the defense request for a retrial, and I expect a thorough investigation into the matters that have been brought to light today." The room erupted into a mixture of gasps and murmurs, the weight of the judge's words reverberating through the crowd. Ava's heart soared. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The prosecutor, realizing the implications of the judge's ruling, stammered, "Your Honor, I must protest. This cannot be." "Enough," the judge said firmly, cutting him off. "The court will not entertain any further objections. The integrity of the judicial system is at stake, and we will not allow corruption to undermine justice." As the courtroom settled, Ava felt tears of relief prick at her eyes. She had fought against the tide of injustice, and now, with the truth finally unveiled, she could see a path forward. Michael turned to her, his expression a mix of pride and determination. "This isn't over, Ava. We still have a long way to go, but we're going to make sure that those responsible for this mess are held accountable." Ava nodded, her heart filled with gratitude for her father's unwavering support. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with the truth and the resolve to dismantle the corruption that had threatened to destroy her life. The journey to justice had only just begun, but they were ready to confront it head-on. The courtroom was charged with a palpable tension, the air thick with anticipation, as the judge's gavel echoed, calling the proceedings to order. Michael Thompson stood beside his daughter Ava, a figure of unyielding determination in the face of the storm that had engulfed them. The evidence had been laid bare, and the path to justice was finally within reach. As the judge prepared to announce the decision, eyes across the room were fixed on him, a collective breath held in suspense. "We have heard compelling evidence that questions the integrity of the case against Ms. Ava Thompson," he stated, his voice resonating with authority. "I am granting a retrial to ensure that justice is served, free from the taint of corruption." A ripple of astonishment swept through the spectators. The prosecutor, who had once exuded confidence, now looked visibly defeated, the weight of his collapsed case bearing down on him. His expression was a mixture of disbelief and resignation. Detectives Harris and Reed, the architects of this web of deceit, sat in stunned silence. The smugness that had once marked their demeanor was replaced with a dawning realization of the consequences they now faced. Their empire of lies was crumbling, and they were powerless to stop it. Ava felt a surge of relief and vindication wash over her. She had clung to hope in the darkest moments, and now the truth was finally setting her free. Her father's relentless pursuit of justice had turned the tide, and she was no longer alone in her fight. Michael's presence was a beacon of strength beside her, his resolve unwavering. He knew that the battle for Ava's freedom was just the beginning, and he was prepared to see it through to the end. The system had failed them, but he had ensured that it would not define their future. As the courtroom began to empty, murmurs of disbelief and outrage filled the air. The spectators filed out, many pausing to offer Ava words of support and encouragement. The tide of public opinion was shifting, and with it a call for accountability and reform. Michael turned to Ava, his expression a mix of pride and determination. "We're not done yet, Ava. We're going to make sure that everyone involved in this conspiracy is held accountable." Ava nodded, her gratitude for her father's unwavering support evident. Together they would face the challenges ahead, armed with the truth and an unyielding commitment to justice. Outside the courthouse, the media waited, cameras flashing as they captured the moment. Reporters jostled for position, eager to relay the dramatic turn of events to their audiences. The story of Ava Thompson had become a rallying cry for those who sought change and demanded accountability from those in power. Michael addressed the crowd, his voice steady and clear. "Today marks a pivotal moment in our fight against corruption. We will not rest until every individual responsible for this miscarriage of justice is held accountable. This is not just about Ava, it's about ensuring that no one else falls victim to a broken system." The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers a testament to the power of truth and the resilience of those who dared to challenge the status quo. Ava stood beside her father, her heart full of gratitude and hope for the future. As the media frenzy continued, Michael and Ava made their way through the throng, their path clear and their resolve unshakable. They knew that the journey to justice was far from over, but they were prepared to see it through to the end. In the days that followed, the ripple effects of the courtroom revelation spread far and wide. The Department of Justice launched a full-scale investigation into the practices of the police department, uncovering a network of corruption that extended beyond Harris and Reed. The officers were suspended pending further inquiry, their actions scrutinized under the harsh glare of public scrutiny. Michael's efforts didn't stop there. He worked tirelessly to ensure that those who had turned a blind eye to the truth were brought to justice. His connections within the justice system proved invaluable as he navigated the complex web of bureaucracy and red tape. Ava, too, found herself at the center of a movement for change. Her story resonated with those who had experienced similar injustices, galvanizing a community of advocates determined to reform a broken system. She became a voice for the voiceless, her journey a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of standing up for what is right. As the investigation unfolded, evidence of misconduct by Harris and Reed continued to mount. Whistleblowers came forward, emboldened by the exposure of the officers' deceit. The once formidable facade of their authority crumbled under the weight of the truth. Michael and Ava remained steadfast in their pursuit of justice, their bond strengthened by the trials they had faced together. They knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but they were buoyed by the knowledge that they were not alone in their fight. The media coverage intensified, shining a spotlight on the systemic issues that had allowed corruption to flourish unchecked. Public pressure mounted, demanding accountability from those in positions of power. In the end, the relentless pursuit of truth led to a cascade of reforms within the justice system. Policies were enacted to increase transparency and oversight, ensuring that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. Ava's case became a catalyst for change, a reminder that the fight for justice is never truly over. Her story inspired others to stand up, to demand accountability, and to push for a system that serves all people, regardless of race or background. As the dust settled, Michael and Ava reflected on the journey they had undertaken together. They had faced adversity and emerged stronger, their commitment to justice unwavering. The road to reform was long, but they were ready to walk it, side by side, determined to make a difference. In the end, justice was not just an abstract concept. It was a lived reality, one that Michael and Ava had fought for with every fiber of their being. Their story had become a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of truth and the strength of the human spirit. As they looked to the future, they knew that the fight for justice was far from over, but with the support of their community and the unwavering resolve of those who believed in change, they were confident that a better world was within reach. Together, they would continue to weave the fabric of justice, determined to create a system that served all people with fairness and integrity. And so, with a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to change, they stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey was long, but they were not alone. They were part of a movement, a community united in the pursuit of justice, and the belief that change was possible. As they moved forward, their story continued to inspire, a reminder that justice, though sometimes elusive, is always worth fighting for. With a newfound hope and an unwavering resolve, they embraced the future, ready to continue their work as change weavers, committed to creating a world where justice prevailed for all.